The morning sun was barely cresting the hills when my peaceful retreat turned into a Wild West showdown. I'd moved to Oak Ridge Acres, a sprawling rural community, to escape city chaos, sinking my life savings into a rustic 5-acre property, complete with a sturdy shed and a bull named Brutus, who guarded it like a king. But as I sipped my coffee on that crisp Saturday, I noticed my shed door ajar and my power meter spinning like a top. Someone had been siphoning electricity. Imagine my shock when I found out it was Karen, the HOA president, juicing her golf cart from my outlet, acting like she owned the place. Have you ever had a neighbor cross a line that left you fuming? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because this tale of how I turned her entitlement into a humbling zap will prove that even a bull can teach a lesson. My name's Jake Rollins, a 42-year-old mechanic with a knack for fixing engines and outsmarting trouble, and after a rough divorce, this land was my fresh start. The property was a dream, rolling hills, a babbling creek, and enough space to breathe. I'd bought it cheap because it sat just outside the HOA's official boundary, relying on a private easement through their land for access, a detail I'd confirmed with my cousin, a property lawyer who'd drilled into me. Read every word, Jake, or they'll bury you in the fine print. That advice was about to save my bacon. The shed, a weathered wooden structure I'd upgraded with a solar-powered outlet for my tools, was my pride and joy, until I found Karen's golf cart plugged in, its sleek white body gleaming like it belonged in a country club, not my backyard. Karen was a force of nature, a petite woman in her late 40s with short grey hair pulled into a tight bun, always decked out in pastel golf attire that screamed privilege. I'd met her at a neighborhood barbecue where she'd lectured me about my unsightly truck parked on my own land, despite my exemption from HOA rules. Her smile was all teeth, no soul, and her voice carried that fake sweetness that hides a venomous sting. "Mr. Rollins," she'd said, "your property affects our aesthetic. Join the HOA and we'll sort it out." I'd declined, and her eyes narrowed like I'd insulted her kingdom. That Saturday, I stormed over to her sprawling estate, a gaudy mansion with manicured lawns dragging my power meter readings. Karen answered the door, her golf glove still on, a martini in hand despite the early hour. "Jake, darling," she chirped, her tone dripping with mockery. "What's the fuss?" I held up the meter. "Your golf cart's been sucking power from my shed for days. That's theft, Karen." Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the morning air. "Oh, please, it's a community courtesy. Your shed's closer than my garage, and I'm doing you a favor by keeping the area active. Join the HOA and we'll call it even." Her audacity stunned me, but I'd dealt with tougher customers in my garage. "I've got an easement, not an invitation," I said, pulling out the contract. "You've got no right to touch my property." Karen waved a manicured hand, her smile tightening. "That easement's outdated. We passed a new bylaw last month. Community resources can be shared for the greater good. You missed the vote, I'm afraid." I hadn't missed anything. I'd never been notified. Her excuse was flimsy, and the timing, right after I moved in, reeked of a setup. Back at my shed, I inspected the damage. The outlet was scorched from overuse, and Brutus, my 1,800-pound bull, pawed the ground, sensing my frustration. I'd raised him since he was a calf, and he was as loyal as a guard dog. A neighbor, Tom, a grizzled farmer who'd worked the land for decades, stopped by with a grim look. "Saw Karen's cart parked here last night," he said, spitting tobacco. "She's been at it for weeks, claiming it's HOA maintenance. Brought in a crew to trim your trees too, said it was for the view." That confirmed it. This wasn't a mistake. It was a power grab. I spent the afternoon rewiring my shed, installing a hidden surge protector to monitor usage. Sure enough, by dusk, the meter spiked again. Karen was back. I watched from my porch as her cart rolled up, her silhouette illuminated by my shed's light. She unplugged, smug as ever, unaware I'd logged every watt. The next day, I called the HOA office, reaching a nervous clerk named Sarah. "Ms. Karen's unavailable," she mumbled. "She said it's part of a new energy-sharing initiative." I pressed her. "Initiative? My property's off limits." Sarah hesitated. "I'll pass it on." Her tone screamed she was covering for something. That evening, I met Tom at a roadside diner outside Oakridge. Over greasy burgers, he spilled more. "Karen's obsessed with control," he said, wiping his mouth. "She's been tapping power from other non-HOA folks, saying it's for community projects. Last month she fined me for a barn roof she claimed clashed with her view." He leaned in, heard her bragging about a grant to modernize the neighborhood. "Sounds like a scam to me." His words painted a picture. Karen wasn't just stealing power. She was building an empire on others' dime. The next morning, I found a letter slipped under my door from Karen offering a compromise. Join the HOA, pay a $3,000 annual fee, and she'd overlook my easement issues. The postscript was a threat. Non-compliance may lead to access restrictions. My blood boiled. She was trying to strong-arm me out or in. What she didn't know was that I'd spent years rigging custom engines, and I had a few tricks up my sleeve. I decided to teach her a lesson, but it'd take planning. I drove to the county recorder's office, where a kind clerk named Martha handed me HOA records. "HOAs think they're above the law," she said with a smirk, "but they've got to follow rules." The documents showed Karen's bylaw amendment, rushed through with forged signatures, granting her authority over shared utilities on adjacent lands. The timing, days before my move-in, screamed conspiracy. I snapped photos, knowing this was leverage. Back home, I devised a plan. My shed backed onto a fenced pasture where Brutus roamed, the fence wired with a low-voltage system to keep him contained. I rerouted the shed's outlet through the fence, setting a trigger to activate if the power draw exceeded normal levels, say, a golf cart charging. The setup was harmless to humans, just a sharp jolt to startle, but it'd send a message. That night I tested it with a spare battery, and Brutus snorted approvingly as if he knew the game was on. The next day, Karen's cart appeared again, its plug humming with greed. I watched from my window as she connected it, her back turned, oblivious. The meter spiked and zap! The fence lit up. Her cart lurched and she yelped, stumbling back as sparks flew. She yanked the plug, her face a mask of shock and fury, then glared at my house. "Rollins, you'll pay for this," she shouted, storming off. I grinned. Phase 1 was a success. That afternoon, I visited Sarah at the HOA office, a modest bungalow with peeling paint. She looked rattled, avoiding my gaze. "Karen's furious," she whispered. "She's calling it sabotage." I handed her my contract. "She's the one stealing. Check the easement." Sarah nodded, promising to look into it. Inside, I glimpsed Karen with a burly man she introduced as Dave, her security consultant. "Mr. Rollins," she said, her voice icy. "Your stunt was dangerous. Join us or we'll escalate." Dave cracked his knuckles, but I stood my ground. As I left, an older man, Hank, intercepted me in the parking lot. "Meet me at Rusty's Tavern at 3, he said quietly. "I know her game." At the tavern, a dive bar with sawdust floors, Hank, a retired electrician, slid me a beer. "Karen's been rigging power taps for years," he said. "Claims it's for community lighting, but she's pocketing a grant for it. I quit her crew when I saw the books, $30,000 gone to her nephew's company." He showed me photos of power lines snaking from non-HOA sheds to HOA lights. This was bigger than my shed. The next morning, I hiked to my property's back trail, avoiding Karen's security patrols, and documented the fence incident with photos and video. The cart's tire marks and singed plug were clear evidence. Back home, I got an email from Karen demanding a meeting to resolve the issue with a veiled threat. "Further interference will cost you your easement." She was escalating, but I had an ace, my cousin's legal expertise and Hank's insider knowledge. That afternoon, I met my cousin Lisa at a park outside Oakridge. She reviewed the records, her lawyer's mind clicking. "This bylaw's invalid, forged signatures, and no public notice," she said. "And tapping your power without consent is theft. File a police report, but let's build a case first." She suggested a sting, using my shed as bait to catch Karen red-handed. I agreed, my mechanic's ingenuity kicking in. The next day, I upgraded the surge protector, adding a hidden camera to record any intrusions. By dusk, Karen's cart was back, her silhouette bold against the shed's light. The camera whirred, capturing her plugging in, unaware of the trap. The fence zapped again and she shrieked, dropping the cord. "Rollins, I'll sue," she yelled. But the footage was gold. Her face, her cart, her crime. That night, I reviewed the video with Lisa and Hank at my place. "This is solid," Lisa said. "But she'll fight dirty. Get more neighbors on board." Hank nodded. "She's got the board in her pocket, but some are cracking." I felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just my battle. It was Oakridge's. As the moon rose, casting silver light over my land, I knew the next move would be decisive. Karen had underestimated me, and with Brutus and my wits, she was about to learn a shocking lesson. The golden sunrise over Oakridge Acres felt like a call to battle as I reviewed the footage from my shed's hidden camera. Karen's furious face frozen mid-shriek after the bull fence delivered its second zap. She thought she could steal my power and bully me into submission. But I wasn't just a mechanic with a knack for engines. I was Jake Rollins, a man who'd spent years fixing problems others couldn't, and I wasn't about to let an entitled HOA tyrant ruin my fresh start. With my cousin Lisa's legal expertise and Hank's insider knowledge, I was ready to turn the tables. Have you ever had to outsmart someone who thought they were untouchable? Stick with me, because this story's about to show how a bull named Brutus and a well-placed wire can bring a Karen to her knees. I started the day by meeting Lisa and Hank at Rusty's Tavern, the dim light and smell of stale beer grounding us as we strategized. Lisa reviewed the video, her lawyer's eyes gleaming. "This is theft, caught on tape," she said, sipping her coffee. "But we need more. Proof of intent, and her broader scheme." Hank slid a folder across the table, his weathered hands steady. "Found this in my old files," he said. "Invoices from Karen's community lighting project, all paid to her nephew's company, Bright Future LLC. No lights were ever installed. The invoices totaled $30,000, siphoned from HOA fees and a grant she'd bragged about. This wasn't just about my shed. It was a full-blown scam. We decided to build a coalition. Hank knew neighbors who'd been burned by Karen's overreach, and Lisa suggested gathering affidavits to strengthen our case. I drove to Tom's farm, where the old farmer was repairing a tractor, his overalls streaked with grease. "Karen's been at it again," he grumbled, wiping his brow. "Tried to charge me $500 for road maintenance on your easement. She's got no claim to it." I showed him the video and his eyes lit up. "I'm in," he said. "She tapped my barn's power last year, claimed it was for holiday lights. Never saw a single bulb." Tom agreed to sign an affidavit and spread the word to other non-HOA folks. By noon, I'd recruited 5 neighbors, each with their own Karen horror story, fines for unapproved fences, demands to join the HOA, even threats to block easements. We called ourselves the Oakridge Renegades, meeting at my place under the shade of a massive oak tree, Brutus snorting nearby as if he approved. Sarah, the HOA clerk, slipped me a burner phone text. "Karen's planning a board meeting tomorrow to address the Rollins issue. She's hired a lawyer." I thanked her, knowing she was risking her job to help us. Karen was circling the wagons, but we were ready to strike. That afternoon, I rigged the shed with a new twist, a decoy outlet, wired to a loud alarm, set to blare if Karen plugged in again. The real outlet stayed connected to the bull fence just in case. By dusk, her golf cart rolled up, its white frame gleaming in the fading light. She plugged into the decoy, and the alarm screamed, a piercing wail that echoed across the hills. Karen jumped, cursing, as neighbors poked their heads out, some filming on their phones. She glared at my house, then sped off, leaving tire marks on my grass. The renegades texted me thumbs-ups. Phase 2 was a hit. The next morning, I drove to the county sheriff's office, a squat brick building on the edge of town. Deputy Carter, a no-nonsense woman with a buzz cut, reviewed my footage and affidavits. "This is theft, plain and simple," she said, her voice gruff. "But the grant fraud's bigger, could be felony territory. I'll need more to raid her office." I handed her Hank's invoices and Lisa's legal brief on the forged bylaw. Carter nodded. "I'll coordinate with the state auditor. Keep her distracted, don't let her destroy evidence. I left, feeling the momentum shift. Back home, I found a cease and desist letter nailed to my shed, accusing me of endangering community safety with my reckless wiring. Karen's new lawyer, a slick guy named Paul, demanded I dismantle the fence system and pay a $5,000 fine for HOA violations. I laughed. My property wasn't under their control. But it showed Karen was desperate. That evening, I met the renegades at Tom's barn, the air thick with the scent of hay. "She's doubling down," I said, showing them the letter. "But we've got her on tape." Tom slammed his fist on a hay bale. "Let's hit her where it hurts, publicly." We planned an ambush at the board meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. at the HOA office. Lisa drafted a formal complaint, signed by the renegades, demanding Karen's resignation and a financial audit. I spent the night upgrading my camera system, adding a live feed to stream the meeting to X, ensuring transparency. By morning, the renegades were ready, armed with affidavits, photos of Karen's power taps, and Hank's invoices. We arrived at the HOA office, a crowd of 30 residents already gathered, whispering about the shed incident. Karen stood at the front, her pastel golf attire pristine, flanked by Paul and Dave, her security consultant. "Neighbors," Karen began, her voice syrupy. "We're here to address a dangerous situation. Mr. Rollins has sabotaged community harmony with his reckless actions." She gestured to a blown-up photo of my shed, claiming the fence posed a lethal risk. Paul chimed in, citing HOA bylaws that allegedly gave them authority over my land. I stood, holding my laptop. "Karen, you've been stealing my power for weeks," I said, projecting the video of her plugging in, followed by the alarm blaring. The crowd gasped, some shouting, "Thief!" Karen's face flushed, but she recovered fast. "That's doctored," she snapped. "He's harassing me." So I clicked to Hank's invoices, showing $30,000 funneled to Bright Future LLC. "This is where our fees went," I said. "Not to Lights, to her family." Residents booed, some demanding answers. Paul tried to intervene, but Tom stood up. "She tapped my barn too," he roared. "Where's my money, Karen?" The room erupted, and Dave stepped forward, cracking his knuckles, but the crowd's anger held him back. Karen raised her hands, her voice shrill. "This is a misunderstanding. The energy-sharing initiative benefits us all." But her lies were crumbling. As the meeting descended into chaos, I slipped out to call Deputy Carter. "It's happening," I said. "She's losing control." Carter was already en route with a warrant, based on our evidence and the state auditor's preliminary findings. Back inside, the renegades handed out flyers detailing Karen's grant scam, with quotes from neighbors she'd targeted. Sarah, risking everything, whispered to me, "She's been shredding files in the back room." I nodded, texting Carter to hurry. By noon, Carter arrived with 2 deputies, their badges glinting in the sunlight. "Ms. Karen," Carter said, her voice cutting through the noise, "we need to speak with you." Karen's face went pale, her hands clutching her golf visor. "This is outrageous," she hissed, but followed Carter to the back room, Paul trailing nervously. The crowd buzzed, some filming, others demanding a full HOA dissolution. Outside, under a towering pine, I met with the renegades. "We've got her," Lisa said, her eyes fierce, "but she'll fight dirty." That afternoon, I visited Martha at the county recorder's office, where she handed me more HOA records. "Found a gem," she said, smiling. "The original charter requires a 75% resident vote for any utility sharing bylaw. Karen never held one." The document was a bombshell. Her entire energy sharing scheme was illegal. I snapped photos, knowing this could dismantle her empire. Back home, I checked the live feed. Residents were still at the HOA office chanting, "Audit now!" Karen's control was slipping, and the renegades were fanning the flames. The next day, I got a tip from Sarah. Karen was planning a counterattack, claiming my fence violated county codes. I drove to the county planning office, where a clerk confirmed no such violation existed. My fence was grandfathered in. "HOAs try this all the time," the clerk said, rolling his eyes. "They bluff to scare you." I thanked him, Then met Hank at my shed where Brutus pawed the ground, sensing the tension. "She's desperate," Hank said. "Heard she's paying Dave to intimidate folks." I nodded, checking my camera. Sure enough, Dave was lurking near my property, snapping photos. That evening I rallied the renegades at Tom's barn, the moon casting shadows through the slats. We reviewed Martha's charter clause and Carter's update. The raid had uncovered bank statements linking Karen to Bright Future LLC, plus emails showing she'd planned to use the grant to buy out non-HOA properties, including mine. "She's been playing a long game," Lisa said, "but we've got her now." Tom suggested we push for a county investigation, while Hank offered to testify about her power-tapping schemes. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the sheriff, attaching our evidence: the video, invoices, affidavits, and the charter clause. Carter was impressed. "This is airtight," she said. "We're raiding her home next. She's got a second set of books there." I smiled, knowing Karen's empire was crumbling. Back home, I found new signs around Oak Ridge. "Support our energy initiative," with Karen's photo, airbrushed to perfection. She was rallying loyalists, but it was too late. The renegades had woken the community. That afternoon, I met with Fees, a local reporter, Amy, who'd seen our X-stream. Over coffee, I shared our story, and she published a piece titled "Oak Ridge HOA President Faces Fraud Allegations." The article went viral, with "How Shock the Karen" trending. Residents flooded my inbox with support, some sharing their own Karen nightmares. The momentum was ours, but I knew she'd try one last trick. Tomorrow's emergency HOA meeting would be the showdown, and I was ready to play my final card. The sun set, casting a fiery glow over my land. I sat with Brutus, his massive head resting on my knee. "We're almost there, buddy," I said, scratching his ears. This wasn't just about my shed anymore. It was about justice for Oak Ridge. Karen had underestimated me, but with the renegades, Lisa's legal savvy, and a Bulls electric backup, she was about to learn her lesson the hard way. The morning of the emergency HOA meeting in Oak Ridge Acres dawned with a fiery red sky, as if nature itself knew a storm was brewing. I stood in my kitchen at 12:15 p.m. PKT on Sunday, May 18th, 2025, sipping my third coffee, my laptop open to the live X stream the renegades had set up, ready to broadcast Karen's downfall to the world. She'd spent weeks siphoning power from my shed, thinking she could bully me into joining her HOA. But I was Jake Rollins, a mechanic who'd faced tougher engines than her entitled schemes, and I had a bull named Brutus and a community behind me. Today we'd end her reign of terror once and for all. Have you ever stood up to someone who thought they could walk all over you? Stay with me, because this story's about to show how one shocking zap can electrify an entire community into action. The HOA office was packed by 10 a.m., over 50 residents crammed into the small bungalow, some spilling onto the lawn with homemade signs reading "Stop the Stealing" and "Karen's Done." Karen stood at the front, her pastel golf attire pristine, her short grey hair pulled into a tight bun, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with a pen as she scanned the crowd. Her lawyer, Paul, stood beside her, his suit wrinkled from stress, while Dave, her security consultant, loomed nearby, his scowl doing little to intimidate the fired-up residents. I stood with the renegades, Tom, Hank, Lisa, and a dozen others, my laptop ready to project the truth. Karen clapped her hands, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "Neighbors, we're here to clear up misunderstandings," she began. "Mr. Rollins has endangered our community with his reckless wiring, and his accusations are baseless." She gestured to a new photo of my shed, claiming the bull fence violated safety codes. Paul nodded, citing HOA authority over adjacent properties. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "Karen, you've been stealing my power." "For weeks," I said, clicking to play the video of her plugging her golf cart into my shed, followed by the alarm blaring and the fence zapping. The crowd gasped, some shouting, "Caught red-handed?" Karen's face turned beet red, her composure cracking. "That's fabricated," she screeched, pointing at me. "He's sabotaging me." But I was ready. I clicked to Hank's invoices, showing $30,000 funneled to Bright Future LLC, her nephew's company. This is where our fees went, I said. Not to lights, to her pockets. I showed the forged bylaw amendment, then Martha's charter clause requiring a 75% resident vote for utility sharing, never held. Residents booed, their anger a tidal wave. Tom stood, his voice booming. She tapped my barn too. Where's my money, Karen? Others joined in, sharing stories of fines and threats. Paul tried to intervene, claiming the invoices were misinterpreted, but Lisa stood, her lawyer's presence commanding. The charter's clear, she said, holding up the document. Your energy sharing scheme is illegal. Every fee you've collected since 2001 could be refunded. The crowd roared, chanting, refund, refund! Karen's eyes darted to Dave, who stepped forward, but the resident's fury held him back. Sarah, the HOA clerk, slipped to my side, whispering, She's got a burner phone in her purse. More evidence. I nodded, texting Deputy Carter, who was waiting outside with a warrant. As the room erupted, Carter and 2 deputies entered, their boots heavy on the creaky floor. Ms. Karen, Carter said, her voice cutting through the chaos, we're taking you in for questioning on charges of theft, fraud, and forgery. Karen's face drained of color, her hands clutching her purse. This is a conspiracy, she hissed, but Carter wasn't fazed, leading her out as residents cheered. Paul muttered something about client privilege and bolted, while Dave slunk away, his intimidation tactics useless against a united community. Outside, under a blazing sun, I addressed the crowd with the renegades. This isn't just about my shed, I said. It's about all of us. Karen's been stealing and lying for years, but we've stopped her. I showed a plan for a voluntary neighborhood association, focused on fairness, not control. Hank proposed a community fund to repair properties Karen had targeted, while Tom suggested a block party to celebrate our freedom. The crowd applauded, some hugging neighbors they'd feared under Karen's reign. Amy, the reporter, filmed it all, her article already trending on X with fashion shock the Karen. That afternoon, Carter called with an update. Karen's confessing, she said, found the burner phone, text to her nephew about the grant scam. She's been skimming $50,000 over 3 years. The raid on Karen's home uncovered a second set of books, detailing every illicit payment, plus emails showing she'd planned to use the grant to buy out non-HOA properties, including mine, for a community resort she'd control. She's looking at 5 years probation and restitution, Carter added. I smiled, imagining Karen cleaning ditches instead of ruling Oakridge. The next day I visited Martha at the county recorder's office, where she handed me a final bombshell. The HOA's original incorporation papers were incomplete, missing a state registration required since 1995. They've been operating illegally for decades, she said, grinning. How you could dissolve them entirely. I filed a petition with 40 residents, seeking dissolution and refunds for years of fees. The case was airtight, thanks to Lisa's legal work and Hank's evidence. Back home, I dismantled the bull fence's zap system, patting Brutus on the head. Good boy, I said, his massive frame nudging me affectionately. The shed's outlet was secure, and my power meter finally rested. That evening, I met the renegades at Tom's barn, where we celebrated with cold beers, the air filled with laughter. We did it, Tom said, raising his bottle. No more Karens. Lisa handed me a draft of our new association's charter, built on transparency and resident votes. Sarah, now free from Karen's grip, joined us, her smile radiant. I'm helping the county audit other HOAs, she said. No one should go through this. A week later, the county court dissolved the Oakridge Acres HOA, citing its illegal operations. Residents cheered as the news spread, some hosting barbecues on lawns Karen had once fined. We won our class action lawsuit, securing $100,000 in refunds, which we used to fund community projects, a new playground, a shared garden, and repairs for those Karen had targeted. Amy's article went national, sparking a wave of HOA reforms across the state, with Oakridge as the poster child for resident empowerment. One sunny morning, I stood on my property, watching Brutus graze peacefully, the shed's door swinging, gently in the breeze. The former HOA office was now a community center, funded by a legitimate grant from a rural development foundation impressed by our fight. They'd hired me to maintain its solar power system, a job that felt like redemption. After months of battle, Karen was serving her probation, working at a recycling plant, her golf cart sold to pay restitution. Fitting justice for a woman who juiced her way into trouble. A year later, my land was a haven, its 5 acres a testament to resilience. The community garden bloomed where Karen's resort would have stood, and the block party we'd planned became an annual tradition, drawing folks from across the county. I'd found a family in the Renegades forged in the fight against tyranny. Lisa called to congratulate me. "You didn't just save your shed," she said. "You saved Oak Ridge." I smiled, thinking of my cousin's advice. Read the fine print. It had led me here, to a place where neighbors trusted each other, not a power-hungry Karen. As I sat on my porch, the sunset painting the hills gold, I reflected on the journey. It started with a golf cart and a siphoned outlet, a small theft. That uncovered a web of greed. But it ended with a stronger Oak Ridge, where folks shared power willingly, not under threat. If you're battling an HOA Karen, check your contracts, rally your neighbors, and don't be afraid to get creative. Sometimes, a bull and a wire are all you need to spark a revolution.